Hello and welcome to the last of our lesson series on video for the program Church Development. It's a 3-course seminar that we'll teach in person. This is just introducing you to the concepts that we will discuss so you can come up with questions. You can have this in the back of your mind so that when we do meet, we're making the most of our time. There'll be a link in the description below that you can click on that takes you to the document. We're on page 3 of that document, Preparing Our Church to Be Welcoming. This will be a little longer than the other videos because I'll go ahead and finish this third section completely. Even though some of it needs a great deal of depth, we won't do that in the video. We'll do it in person. When we think about making our church welcoming, there are 3 aspects that we need to look at. First is the director. The second is the purpose, goals, and metrics. That's kind of how we measure and evaluate what we're doing. And the last is our areas of focus. So we will be looking at these things in detail. And I want you to be aware that, again, these are principles. And it cannot cover rules for every possible ministry that's out there, but these are principles, if you see in this, that you can apply to a vast number of ministries that will then guide any rules that you need to set. First of all, the director. The director of a welcoming ministry, an engagement ministry, an outreach ministry that's a part of your overall work is not the pastor. If it is the pastor, then you're overloading the shepherd of the flock. And this needs to go to sub-shepherds. The director needs to really understand the purposes of a greeter. They need to understand the ministry opportunities in a church. So this person can see how others can engage and be volunteers. You can't expect a director of your outreach or your engagement and welcoming programs to fit people into what will serve their needs and help them serve the church if they're unaware of what those opportunities are. So it really needs to be an engaged person. It also needs to be someone who has people skills. And I'm not talking about, you don't need to find an extrovert, a bubbly person, and we all know those people. My wife is that kind of person. She's just fire. She's upbeat. Everybody loves to see her coming. Everybody leaves being in her presence with a smile. And that's great. And your leader of your outreach and welcoming program might be like that, but not necessarily. It just means that they know how to deal with someone with grace. That's what's important. So if they are outgoing like that, wonderful. If they're not quite that outgoing, that's okay too, as long as grace and awareness are part of who they are. So it will be important, and we'll discuss this in more detail of who a director of your outreach, engagement, or welcoming director needs to be. The purpose and goals and metrics. I just lumped all these together because we talked about them before. The purpose. You must have a clear statement of what the sub-ministry of your welcoming or your engagement or your community volunteer involvement program is. Really understand that, and your director must understand it. Your director might help you develop that, and your director must be open to adjusting that as your congregation demographic changes, as the overall purpose of your congregation changes. Maybe your ministry evolves into something new and better, or something different than what has been traditional. Well, your greeter, your welcoming, your engagement ministry will change accordingly. And so you need to understand that purpose. And then the goals that you have. If we don't have something to reach for, we won't ever reach anything. Right? I mean, nobody just goes to a garden and says, I'm going to have a vegetable garden, and just sits at the end of the row hoping something happens. They don't just go out and plow the ground and blindly reach in and grab a bunch of seed and throw it out there. They make some plans. I'm going to plant my potatoes at this time of the year. I'll put in my tomato plants at this time of the year. Now, will those plans go awry? Yeah, something's going to happen. It won't be perfect. But if they didn't have some plan, they would never have any vegetables. And that's the way we need to think of our church. Our plans, our goals, will probably go differently than what we expect. But if we don't make them, we can never adjust them and improve. Okay, so we prayerfully need to set goals for even our greeters, our welcoming, our engaging, our outreach programs. And then we need to have metrics. How do we measure? This will be different for every congregation, every set of people, every culture, how it fits into the overall purpose of the church or mission work that you're doing. But you need to have a way to sit down quarterly and examine, is this particular sub-ministry within our church reaching its goals? Is it accomplishing what we want it to accomplish? That means you have listed some things to look for. What is the measure that you use? And if you're not reaching those metrics, then you listen to the people that are involved and maybe understand why not. Maybe they're metrics that you don't need anymore and you need to put in different metrics. So that needs to be there. Otherwise, you don't really know if you're doing good. You may be busy, you may be happy, but are you accomplishing anything? And that's what's important to us. We want to accomplish. It's not for the sake of the numbers. It's for the sake of the impact that we're having. The areas of focus that we have for the person who will be in charge of this welcoming, engaging aspect of the church is there need to be greeters. We talked about how the greeters are in previous lessons, and we'll go into that in even greater detail and more role playing when we get to that here. Remember, the greeters need to be very aware of what's happening in the church. They need to be very personable. They need to have people skills. They need to be the kind of person who understands how to direct someone. Seating. You need to have ushers in almost every ministry. It doesn't mean that they're formally involved, but they're just available. So if someone comes in and you see that they have special issues, they've never been to the church before, and then you don't ask them if they want an usher. You say, we have someone that can show you the seats that are available. We'll show you where we have wheelchair access, show you where you can sit next to your walker, and those kind of things, and have an usher available for when it's needed. In most churches, it's not needed, but when they're needed and not available, then it creates a problem. You're looking for someone, the person who needs to be ushered in for whatever reason now feels awkward, and we don't want that to happen. This is family. We want them to feel welcome. Educate your congregation on where to sit. Don't fill those first seats near the rear on the aisles, whether it's the outside aisle or the center aisle. That's where we sit, and it doesn't need to be that. We need to go more toward the front, toward the middle of the church, and in the middle of the seats. Now, if you're not able to do that because physically you just can't do it, I'm not talking about those exceptions. I'm talking about the other 90% of us who could sit and leave those aisle seats and seats near the rear available for others. We want to also leave aisle seats near the front too, but especially near the back and especially near the aisles. And the reason for that is, think if you're going to a place and you're not sure it's where you want to be, you've been hurt, you're shy, you don't want to draw attention to yourself, you've come in late, and so you're going into that church and now you have to walk past 6 rows of people sitting on the aisle, and all you feel is eyes upon you. Now, I don't think that way when I go to church. I sit up near the front. I want to see, hear, be a part of what's going on. But you know what? I was raised in church. I don't ever remember not going to church 3, 4, 5 times a week sometimes, all my life. But that's not most of the world out there. So I want them to be able to find a seat. If they're the kind that want to go toward the middle or the front, I'm leaving some aisle seats available for them up there too. But for the average person that just wants to get in, they're a visitor, they just want to sit near the rear, they don't want to be seen a lot, I want to leave those seats, some seats back there available for them. Little things like that make a big difference, and we'll talk about more of those principles. We need to make sure that our congregation is educated on opportunities in our church. So whether it's a part-time attender that comes or someone that's just passing through that comes, whatever, we want to make sure that our congregation is able to see in somebody's life where they have this need, or they might be blessed by this ministry, they're aged, or they have young children, and we have a ministry that helps with that, so that you can then go find the person who's responsible for that ministry and maybe do some introductions when the time is right for that. Inviting people to church. Please teach your congregation. Don't make open-ended invitations regularly. It's okay to do that sometime. Please come to church with me sometime. I'd love for you to come to church with me sometime. It would be a joy for you to be in the church. And that's good. but that's all it is. The way we make that more effective is we invite somebody to a specific date and time and place to join us. And we even offer to go pick them up if we're driving, and we can do that. If it's in a culture or place where they walk to church, we offer to walk with them. I'd love to come and walk to church with you next Sunday morning at 9:30. And see, I've given a specific place and time. I'm coming to them. Also, if we've invited them to something specific and we're not bringing them, we're not walking with them, be watching the door for when they might arrive, and be even willing to be back there a little late in case they arrive late. And don't make them come in the door and look for you. You look for them and go out and greet them. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for accepting my invitation, and welcome them in because they're family. And that's the way we want to treat them. You know, when my cousins used to come visit at my grandparents' house, I lived right up the road from my grandparents. And my cousins would come visit in summer school breaks and on the Christmas holidays. And you know what? We would be looking, we'd be watching. And as the car was coming up the gravel road to get to our grandparents' house, you know, we wouldn't be sitting in the living room waiting for them to stick their head in the door. Man, we would run out on the front porch and we would be ready to say, I'm glad you're here. And why? Because they were family. And it was going to be a great time to be with them. Well, that's the way we need to embrace people that we've invited to church. Man, I'm so glad you're here. So that's something to think about when you invite people. You know, they become your focus when they show up. Volunteerism. Our churches are really lacking in volunteers. And I don't think it's because there are a lack of people with ability or desire. I think most of it is we don't clearly communicate what our volunteer needs are. We say the need is do this or do that, but we don't give any specifics. And you know what? I've learned over the years, I'm not volunteering for anything if I don't have details. And I even had somebody tell me that one time. They said, I would love to teach Sunday school, but I've learned that if I volunteer for a Sunday school class, I'll be doing it for the next 20 years. And I don't want to teach Sunday school every Sunday for the next 20 years. So we tell them, you know, the expectation is that here's how we will help you be equipped for what you're volunteering for. Here's when it takes place. Here are the limitations of our expectations on you. Here are the goals that we would like for you to reach. Here's who you can turn to if you have questions and things aren't working. I've been thrown into task. I've been in church all my life, but I've been thrown into task at New Church, even as the pastor, and I kind of wanted to help out. And they said, well, we want you to go do something in the kitchen, but I have no idea what to do. You know, and someone says, well, go get these supplies, but no one has shown me where the supplies are. So how can I go get the supplies? And so I have to keep asking a million questions. I feel awkward. I don't want to engage. And we're losing a lot of volunteers because we aren't specific with the expectations. We need somebody to help out in the men's group. What is it, putting on a roof? I can't do that. I can't not supposed to lift more than 20 pounds for the rest of my life due to surgery. So I'm going to hang back. We need men to volunteer in our men's program because someone who can bring a devotion one Saturday a month. You know what? I'd volunteer for that. See, they got specific, and I knew specifically what was expected of me, how often it was expected of me, and then I feel I can do that. So we need to do that when we're asking for volunteers, and we'll get a lot more. So you begin thinking about these principles. Who could be a director for your welcoming, your greeting, your outreach ministry in your church? Think about, have you established, or who you can work with to establish the purpose, the goals, and the metrics for that subset of ministry in your church? And then begin to think about the areas of focus, the greeters, the seating, the follow-up, the inviting, and the volunteerism in your church. And come with questions. We'll do some role playing. We'll talk about your specific ministries, and we'll take these principles and see how you can establish some guiding rules. God bless you. Hope to talk to you soon. Thank you for your patience in listening to this. Take care.